Hello human, welcome to a marginal media short documentary. Former Colombian President Álvaro Uribe Vélez has been sentenced to 12 years of house arrest in the criminal trial against him, facing charges of witness tampering and procedural fraud. A case that, counting its background, investigations, and trial, has dragged on for more than 11 years. Controversial as it may be, many have called the ruling historic, since it's the first time a former president has been convicted in Colombia, showing that, at least in the courts, no one is above the law. The legal battle is so vast that we could make a 2-hour documentary and still be only halfway through it. So today, we bring you the key highlights, so you can draw your own conclusions about the judge's recent decision. Let's begin. Although we could trace things back to the 1980s, when Uribe's alleged ties to paramilitary groups first began, the formal starting point of this case was in 2014. On September 18, 2014, Senator Iván Cepeda, another key player in this story, led a congressional debate on paramilitarism. There, he presented a series of pieces of evidence that, according to him, link former President Álvaro Uribe to the origins of paramilitary activity in Antioquia.
Complaint, which is reflected in a document that has been declassified by the FBI, in which the FBI states that it has received information confirmed by various sources, contacts and links, technical means, and public security operations from the United States, in which it is stated that several politicians from Antioquia of the Liberal Party conducted their campaigns financially assisted by Pablo Escobar.
A review of the results of those elections allows us to establish that amongst the senators elected at that time were Álvaro Uribe and Bernardo Serna, who had been mentioned in other statements.
Part of his presentation drew on earlier investigations, including interviews with two former paramilitary members, Pablo Hernán Sierra and Juan Guillermo Monsalve. Those very interviews ended up earning Cepeda a lawsuit filed by the former president back in February 2012. That lawsuit has also been taken as the true starting point of this entire case, and it's even referenced in Judge Heredia's ruling from July 28, 2025. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Back to the 2014 debate. Right before it began, then Senator Uribe and several members of his party walked out of the chamber and went straight to the Supreme Court. There, the former president filed a complaint against Cepeda for defamation and for allegedly tampering with witnesses. The complaint leaned on the testimonies of two ex-paramilitaries, known by their aliases Simón and Castañeda, who claimed Cepeda had offered them perks in exchange for statements against Uribe. If true, that would seriously call into question the credibility of Sierra and Monsalve's testimonies. After all, if Cepeda supposedly tried to buy off Simón and Castañeda, who's to say he didn't pull the same move with the other two? These testimonies reached the former president thanks to Wilcer Molina, once an investigator with the CTI, later a defense attorney for paramilitaries, and today the mayor of the town of Amaga. It was through Molina and a cattle rancher named Juan Guillermo Villegas that the Supreme Court got hold of a series of wiretapped phone calls that put Uribe in hot water. Among them was his now infamous line,
"So those bastards are listening to this call."
Ah, yes, those bastards intercept everything.
In February 2018, the Supreme Court closed the case against Iván Cepeda. The wiretaps, the contradictions in the testimonies of Simón and Castañeda, and other evidence gathered during the investigation dismantled Uribe's complaint. But then the case took an unexpected turn. The court also found signs that Uribe himself might have been buying false testimony to discredit Cepeda. That's when they decided to open a preliminary investigation against the former president. Around that time, the last major character of this story entered the scene. Attorney Diego Cadena. He called himself the law gangster.
I tell you, I have several professions. By day lawyer, by night gang lawyer. 1 day a week or 2 days a week, agronomist.
At night what?
Lawyer gangster.
According to prosecutors, Cadena toured several prisons across the country, hunting for statements that could incriminate Cepeda and, in the process, clear the former president's name. Among those visits were 2 trips on February 21st and 22nd of 2018 to La Picota prison. The goal? To meet with Juan Guillermo Monsalve. On the 21st, Cadena couldn't get to him, so he went back the next day. On February 22nd, he finally managed to meet with Monsalve, along with another inmate, Enrique Pardo Hache, who was serving time for kidnapping. During that meeting, both Cadena and Pardo Hache tried to persuade Monsalve to change his testimony and claim that Cepeda had offered him perks in exchange for testifying against Uribe. What they didn't know was that Monsalve was wearing a spy watch that secretly recorded the entire conversation. Those recordings would later become key evidence in the case. Around the same time, pro-Uribe Senator Álvaro Hernán Prada met with former paramilitary Carlos Eduardo López Caliche, a close friend of Juan Guillermo Monsalve. After that meeting, Caliche reached out to Monsalve to tell him he'd been approached. They wanted him to pressure Monsalve into changing his story, to stop pointing the finger at Uribe and, in the process, implicate Ivan Cepeda.
I heard it directly. They put the old man on speaker for me there. He said, "Come on, son. Can you go in and talk to him and have him send us a video saying that that son of a bitch is not promising things that he couldn't keep? Something about when he says and what he is talking about, can he fulfill that for us?"
On April 12, 2018, kidnapper Enrique Pardo Hache sent a letter to the Supreme Court claiming that Monsalve was deeply regretful about having testified against Uribe. Monsalve, however, shot that down. He said he wasn't remorseful at all and that he never asked Hache to send such a letter. To back up his word, Monsalve handed over several videos recorded with his spy watch, in which Hache can be seen trying to persuade him to flip his testimony. In one of the most surreal moments, Hache even tells him Uribe is God.
Just imagine. Uribe is God. He is God.
In June 2018, another former paramilitary, Carlos Vélez, testified that Diego Cadena had visited him in prison and offered him 200 million Colombian pesos in exchange for a statement against Cepeda and to recruit other ex-paramilitaries to do the same. Since he was never paid the full amount, Vélez later retracted his claims before the court. Among the evidence presented were money transfer receipts sent to his sister. According to him, of the $77,000 promised, he only received about $12,000. By November 2019, Diego Cadena was formally summoned for questioning. In December, the prosecutor's office cited him, and by July 2020, he was officially charged with witness tampering and procedural fraud. On August 3, 2020, Colombia's Supreme Court ordered former President Álvaro Uribe into house arrest. 9 days later, on August 12th, he was officially registered as inmate number 10-87-985. During the investigation and his brief period of house detention, Uribe resigned his Senate seat, thereby giving up his congressional immunity. Though it seemed like a personal decision, in reality, it was a legal maneuver. With Uribe no longer a sitting senator, the Supreme Court lost jurisdiction over the case, which was then handed over to the Attorney General's office. At that time, the office was headed by the controversial Francisco Barbosa, a close friend of President Iván Duque, Uribe's protege and political heir. A change of venue that was, let's say, convenient. On March 5, 2021, without much explanation, the prosecutor in charge, Gabriel Jaimes, requested that the case be closed, arguing there was insufficient evidence to indict the former president. Faced with opposition from several judges, that motion failed. From then until 2024, there were multiple attempts to dismiss the case, none successful. On April 9, 2024, barely a month after Luz Adriana Camargo took office as Attorney General, the case against Álvaro Uribe was reactivated. That same day, prosecutors decided to bring him back to trial. By random draw, the case landed in the hands of Bogotá's 44th Circuit Court judge, Sandra Heredia. And after years of legal back and forth, the formal hearings finally began in February 2025, with witnesses taking the stand. On July 28th, Judge Sandra Heredia spent 10 hours reading aloud portions of the more than 1,000-page ruling her court drafted against the former president. In it, she convicted him of procedural fraud and judicial witness tampering, while acquitting him of simple bribery. The document, criticized for its sheer length, validated the wiretaps against Uribe and concluded that he knew exactly what he was doing when he set the stage for Cadena to roam Colombia's prisons in search of testimony. The judge also gave full credibility to Monsalve. In her view, the ex-paramilitary's account has remained consistent, while Uribe's witnesses repeatedly contradicted themselves. On August 1st, Judge Heredia announced that the former president would serve 12 years under house arrest. His defense immediately filed an appeal, sending the case up to Bogotá's Superior Court. Now the clock is ticking. The case is set to expire on October 15th, or at least that's the assumption. On August 25th, Uribe waived the statute of limitations, arguing he did so to allow justice all the time it needs, without the risk of expiration. While some see this as a good faith move, victims in the case view it as a political maneuver aimed at swaying public opinion in the middle of an electoral campaign. Most recently, on September 30th, Bogotá's third criminal court sentenced Diego Cadena to 7 years of house arrest, finding him guilty of witness tampering in the Monsalve case. Álvaro Uribe's trial, it wasn't just about the evidence. There was also a parallel media war. Both in mainstream outlets and across social media, a narrative was pushed about an alleged political persecution against the best president Colombia has ever had. Uribe and his party found propaganda to be their strongest defense strategy. They labeled the judge, Senator Iván Cepeda, and other figures involved in the case as left-wing conspirators. Over and over, they insisted it was all a political trial against the president who defeated terrorism. But as we've seen throughout this documentary, the process is not about his record as head of state, nor a historical debate about paramilitarism. It all comes down to a case of witness tampering. And the most ironic twist of all is that this investigation and the conviction he now faces would never have existed if Uribe hadn't filed that complaint against Cepeda in the first place. Amid so much pressure and polarized commentary came a report in Revista Semana, published just one day before the judge's ruling. The story of the judge who will rule on Álvaro Uribe. Her family in Tolima is conservative, but those who know her say she's on the left. The piece insinuated that if the decision went against the former president, it would be because the judge was ideologically biased. To do so, it leaned on anonymous rumors, statements that felt more invented than sourced. There was also a column by Juan Lozano in El Tiempo titled "Open Letter to the Judge of Álvaro Uribe," in which he basically told the judge how she should do her job. He even urged her not to become an instrument of revenge, and dropped lines like, "Nothing is more disgraceful for any judge in the world than condemning an innocent person." On the other side, in El Espectador, journalist Felipe Zuleta added that judging a former president could fracture democracy. The Qajar Lawyers Collective, who also represent Iván Cepeda, didn't escape the media attacks either. For years, Uribe and his supporters have branded them as ideologically biased and as the legal arm of the guerrilla. In 2023, the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights formally recognized the group as victims of political persecution. In 2021, Revista Semana ran a story targeting Monsalve, clearly aimed at discrediting Iván Cepeda. The report showcased Monsalve's excesses in prison, parties, alcohol, video game consoles, even women. The subliminal message was obvious. If he was enjoying such privileges, wasn't it thanks to Cepeda? They even accused him of being a middleman to secure perks for other inmates, including certain white-collar prisoners. This doesn't mean the exposé shouldn't have been published. On the contrary, it was necessary. Monsalve is a former paramilitary convicted of kidnapping, and as such should be serving his sentence under the same prison conditions as any other inmate. The controversy lay in the way Semanas framed this and other reports, portraying him as Colombia's most pampered prisoner, with a cell allegedly more luxurious than those of well-known businessmen and politicians. Uribe's attorney, Jaime Granados, went as far as to say that Monsalve wasn't a witness but a kidnapper. And yes, no one disputes that Monsalve is a criminal, but an inevitable question arises. Were Uribe's witnesses supposed to be saints? It's worth recalling that Hache is serving time for kidnapping, while Simón and Castañeda are ex-paramilitaries with long criminal records of their own. But the attacks didn't stop there. Monsalve's ex-partner, Deyanira Gomez, who is also a witness in the case, was targeted by Revista Semana. Although she is just an ordinary citizen, the magazine portrayed her as the surgeon at the service of the FARC, relying on outdated and unsubstantiated files that had never been enough to open a formal investigation. Ivan Cepeda was repeatedly branded a guerrilla. To back up this narrative, they used photos of him alongside FARC members, taken during different peace negotiations. After the conviction was made public, the former president's sons, Tomas and Geronimo, accused him of being the heir to the FARC, accusations that Cepeda has announced he will challenge in court. 15 days before the ruling, journalist Daniel Coronel revealed an attempt by Diego Cadena to link Cepeda and his attorney, Miguel Ángel del Rio, to drug traffickers. For this, Cadena met with Manuel Castañeda, a man under investigation for drug trafficking, known as the narco driver. Cadena told him that if he testified against Cepeda and his lawyer, he might help him obtain benefits from the FBI. The story of Álvaro Uribe in court is not just that of a former president facing a criminal conviction. It's also the story of a country caught between justice and propaganda. Every ruling, every appeal, and every rumor leaked to the press becomes ammunition in a political war that seems endless. Today, Uribe awaits a decision in the second instance, while his defense tries to prove that he is allegedly the victim. Meanwhile, his critics celebrate the fact that, for the first time, someone as powerful as him is being held accountable before the law. The case is still far from over, and a final outcome may be a long way off. Guilty or innocent? That's for the appeals court to decide. See you next time. Peace.